Ah, you're just in time for a story. For 10 long years, the plague known as the Red Death had devastated the country. No other pestilence or plague had been so fatal or hideous. Blood was the disease's avatar and its seal. Those who succumbed to the disease would experience sharp pains and sudden dizziness. Then the victim bled profusely from the pores. The victim's entire body then became covered in scarlet stains. The whole process, seizure, progress, and the termination was over within half an hour. The disease caused entire graveyards to be filled, but not all the country's inhabitants were ready to face the death. The infamous Prince Prospero was happy and dauntless. When over half of his followers were brought down by the pestilence, he summoned 1,000 of his light-hearted friends and invited them to his secluded, castellated abbey. The mighty stone wall stood a mile high over the desolate lands of the once prosperous country. The wall sealed off the abbey from the rest of the world. The country would take care of itself, and Prospero's legions would simply wait until the disease had wiped itself out. In Prospero's quarantined land, it was pointless to grieve, or even to think of the outside world. It was nearing the close of the 5th or 6th month of seclusion, while the disease continued to destroy the country and spread to others, that Prince Prospero entertained the 1,000 with a masked ball. A masquerade of the most unusual magnificence. The masquerade was a voluptuous scene. But first, let me tell you of the rooms in which the masquerade was held. There were 7 rooms. An imperial suite. Like in other palaces, this suite formed a long and straight vista. The doors slid back into the walls so that the view of the entire suite was not impeded. But the prince's love of the bizarre should be expected, for each room was decorated and illuminated in a specific colour, and contained a large Gothic window that corresponded to the colour of the room. The first room was blue, the second purple, the third chamber green, the fourth was furnished in orange, and the 5th white, the 6th violet, and the 7th was shrouded in black tapestries. However, the window in the 7th room had panes of scarlet, the deep red colour of blood. Instead of candelabras or chandeliers, the rooms were lit by a heavy tripod, each containing a brazier of fire. The effect of this fire in the 7th room was ghastly and extreme. The look of the room was so wild that none of the 1,000 guests dared to enter. In the 7th apartment, there was an antique clock of ebony that would chime every hour. The chimes would echo through the very walls of the abbey. The hourly chimes of this clock were so peculiar that the musicians were instructed to stop playing until the chimes had ceased. After the chimes stopped, the musicians and the guests were to continue with the masquerade. But in spite of these peculiar things, the masquerade was a magnificent affair. The Duke had directed a masterful masquerade. The first 6 apartments were packed, and in them beat the heart of life. And as the clock struck 12, the revellers paused. The music ceased. The crowd was quiet. The crowd waited for 12 strokes to sound. It was as the clock struck that final time that the first guest noticed it. Then one by one, they all became aware of a masked figure which had caught not one of the guests' attentions before now. Murmurs spread, and whispers spoke of surprise, then fear and disgust. In the assembly of phantasms, it could be supposed that no ordinary appearance could have aroused such a fearful sensation. The figure was tall and gaunt, and shrouded from head to foot in garments one might see a loved one wear when laid to rest. The figure's mask concealed the face beneath, so all that could be seen was the visage of a stiffened corpse. The figure's attire was daubed in blood. His entire face was sprinkled with the scarlet stains. Even the Duke's peculiar tastes were not as disturbing as this figure's appearance. The figure made its way through the revellers, looking at them with its lifeless eyes, looking at them almost in disgust. The prince's brow reddened with a hard rage.
Who dares? Who dares insult us with this blasphemous mockery? Seize him! Seize him and unmask him, so we know who to hang at sunrise!
To hang from the battlement!
It was in the blue chamber that the prince stood, and he uttered these words. His words passed throughout the entire suite.
Seize him, I said!
But not one of the 1,000 revellers moved in an attempt to seize the intruder. The figure made his way from the blue room to the purple, and the purple to the green, and the green to the orange, and the orange to the white, and then to the violet. But still, not a single soul attempted to seize him. The figure entered the final room. It was then that the prince decided to end his momentary cowardice. The prince drew out a dagger and prepared to strike at the intruder who had made the prince a coward in his own home. Summoning the courage of their despair, threw themselves into the final room, seizing the figure under the shadow of the ebony clock. The collective gasped in horror, and they found under the mask no tangible form. They were in the presence of the Red Death itself. One by one, the revellers fell down, dead, all dying identically to the prince. The last form of life within the abbey was the ebony clock. But it, too, died along with the last of the 1,000. Darkness and decay and the Red Death held illimitable dominion over all.